moving to a new city was supposed to be a new beginning for me. I was pleased to start a new chapter in my life after getting a new job. The idea of a stunning new home seemed too wonderful to be true, and the city was bustling. I could not have made a worse mistake. I was astounded by the majestic estate known as Hawthorne House, which exuded an air of luxury. It was surrounded by tall trees and immaculate lawns in a quiet area, with its lofty windows that appeared to be peering out into the outside world. The mansion was a marvel of modern architecture. I felt a peculiar chill hit me the instant I stepped into the house. It seemed as though the walls themselves carried the secrets of earlier generations, and the air was thick with history. Although they'd been helping me move in, my paws were clearly uncomfortable. I couldn't help but feel more alone as they were leaving. I was lying in bed that night when I heard a faint whisper, so faint I thought I might have dreamt it. I strained to hear, attempting to decipher the garbled words. The murmur appeared to originate from the house's walls themselves, as if they were possessed by a ghostly, silent force. The whispers became louder and more insistent over the next few days, as their meaning became more apparent. I would wake up in the middle of the night with a persistent sense of being observed. The sounds had a tone of agony and longing, as though they were pleading for something. In an attempt to explain the unexplainable happenings, I made the decision to look into the history of Hawthorne House. My investigation turned some information about the house's longtime resident, famous artist Amelia Hartman. Amelia was well known for her eccentricities and her insular demeanor. She was also noted for her vibrant paintings that seemed to embody the very core of the human spirit. However, as her notoriety increased, she became more and more alone, withdrawing from society and devoting herself to her work. There were rumors that Amelia had a mysterious quality to her paintings, almost like a doorway into the other world. Some even asserted that she could actually bring her subjects to life through her work, a talent she had acquired via an enigmatic ceremony. My investigation into Amelia's biography revealed that she had vanished from sight, leaving behind her life's work and an enigmatic home. The mansion had been abandoned for years, the artist's ghost roaming the corridors, and the locals thought that her preoccupation with her work had brought her to ruin. The house began to shake with louder whispers, and I felt like I could hear Amelia's voice attempting to get through. Her remarks seemed desperate, as though she were pleading for aid. As I listened to her more, I began to feel more connected to her, as like I was a part of the secrets of Hawthorne House. Driven to find the truth, I contacted Dr. Sarah Bennett, a paranormal investigator with experience investigating haunted houses. She consented to take her team to the residence to look into the paranormal activity. We started with a seance in an attempt to communicate with Amelia's spirit after Dr. Bennett set up equipment to record any paranormal activity. The anticipation in the air increased as we sat in the poorly lighted living room. The seance was a powerful event. I sensed an unearthly presence in the room as Dr. Bennett channeled the ghosts. It appeared as though spectral energy had come to life within the house's walls. Amelia's voice reverberated across the space as her spirit spoke. She verified the whispers concerning her artwork and the enigmatic ceremony she had carried out. She talked on the ability to bring her subjects to life in her paintings, the force they had, and the unexpected consequences of her choices. Amelia disclosed that she had created a painting depicting a small child, a painting that embodied the very spirit of life. The girl had evolved from being merely a work of art made of paint and canvas to a sentient entity imprisoned in the paranormal realm. Amelia begged for assistance in freeing the girl, her voice heavy with sorrow as she described her situation. I couldn't get rid of the sensation that Amelia's spirit was attempting to communicate with me, and that I had some sort of connection to solving the riddle surrounding the property as the seance went on. We had to find the portrait and break the house's curse, according to Dr. Bennett and her colleagues. We had to navigate the mansion's secret passageways and hidden chambers in order to locate the portrait. Amelia's subjects appear to us in the form of apparitions, each one a live example of her work. The ghosts tried everything they could to obstruct our attempts, as if they were attempting to keep the terrible secret of the house hidden. The evil energy inside the house appeared to intensify as we got closer to our objective. It felt like the house itself was attempting to engulf us as the walls closed in around us. We were aware that Amelia's mysterious force was adamant to keep its secrets to itself. At last, we discovered the cursed image in a secret chamber tucked away deep inside Hawthorne House. The vision of a small child, her eyes full of an unearthly grief, was menacing. The space seemed to come alive as we stretched out to touch the picture, and a sinister force began to ripple through the air. Leah's ghostly body materialized in front of us, glistening with agony. She disclosed the truth about the image, namely that the girl's life was cursed and that her soul had become imprisoned within the artwork. The house was determined to keep the girl's spirit imprisoned because it had been endowed with mystical power. Anger welled up inside the house as we attempted to release the girl's spirit. Our spirits were in jeopardy as the walls buckled and twisted, engulfing us in a terrifying labyrinth. We made one last, desperate attempt to break the cursed portrait, unleashing a surge of energy that drove the evil energy out of the house. The spirits inside Hawthorne House ceased to speak when the house shook. It appeared as though the curse had been lifted at last. Finally, Amelia's voice faded into the house's echoes and her spirit found peace. We sensed a deep silence descend upon the estate as Dr. Bennett and her staff left the room. The years-long darkness that had enveloped the mansion had gone. I was overcome with thankfulness for the spirits that had led me to discover the truth. Hawthorne House was now a haven for lost souls who had found atonement rather than a place to be feared. Once veiled in mystery and terror, the house has come to represent the strength of truth and the resiliency of the human spirit. It was a place where the ghosts of Hawthorne House had at last found release, a place where the past had been faced. I couldn't help but think back on the adventure that had brought me to learn of Hawthorne House's terrifying secrets as I drove away for the last time. The souls inside had found peace, and the evil power that had tormented the mansion had vanished. However, the ghosts of the past would never go away, serving as a constant reminder that certain secrets are best kept hidden, and that some curses can only be lifted by the daring of those who are prepared to face the unknown head-on. I had learned from Hawthorne House that the human spirit was stronger than the supernatural, and that even the most haunted locations could be made whole. I'd always wanted to buy a home of my own. It was thrilling to consider making a new beginning somewhere new. I had no idea that my fantasy would become a nightmare at the new house I was going to call home. A real estate agent called me one beautiful morning about a home that looked too wonderful to be true, and that's how it all started. The house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, modern and roomy. I decided to visit the house right away because the pricing was so low. As soon as I arrived, I was astounded by how magnificent the mansion was. Known as the Whispering House, it was a stunning two-story building with enormous windows that let in an abundance of natural light into every room. The neighborhood was friendly and serene, and the garden was kept up nicely. Warm smiles beamed at me from the real estate agent, Karen, a kind woman. "I'm sure you'll love living here," she replied, passing me the house keys. "It's an excellent spot to make a fresh start." I was apprehensive and excited at the same time when I entered the house for the first time. A large living room featuring a stone fireplace and high ceilings was accessible from the grand foyer. The bedrooms were spacious and welcoming, and the kitchen was contemporary and well furnished. I was astonished by my good fortune and thought the property was ideal in every aspect. I started the process of moving in over the following few weeks. My buddies assisted me with the heavier lifting, and before long, my possessions were packed into the house. I was excited to take it upon myself since it was a new beginning. But it didn't take me long to discover that the Whispering House was different. In the living room one evening, I was unpacking boxes when I thought I heard a faint voice. I froze, listening with strained ears. It sounded like it was coming from the walls, like the house itself was attempting to talk to me. At first, the whispers were hazy, like a light wind stirring leaves. I wrote them off as the settling of an old house or my imagination playing tricks on me. However, the murmurs became more audible as the days passed, and I was forced to acknowledge their existence. Words started to come to me, like though someone was whispering to me in the darkness. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the voices were unsettling. It was as though they were attempting to disclose to me a terrifying secret that was hidden within the walls of the house. I heard a name being said repeatedly one night as I lay in bed. Helen, Helen. My spine tingled as I heard the name reverberate throughout the space. I was uncomfortable with the disembodied voice because I had never met a Helen. I started to feel as though I wasn't alone in the house as the whispers became more and more frequent. I would frequently experience a presence in the room and wake up in the middle of the night. The temperature would drop sharply, and I would hear soft, melancholy moans. My relatives and acquaintances downplayed my worries, saying the noises were just my imagination or the house settling. However, I was aware that something was off. Because I was in search of answers, I chose to research the Whispering House's past. I discovered a local historian who had written a great deal about the area thanks to my investigation. She informed me of the house's troubled past, which the real estate agent had opportunistically concealed. As it happened, there was a rumor that the Whispering House was cursed. It had changed hands multiple times, with each owner escaping after seeing unexplained occurrences. The tale of the former owner, Helen, was the creepiest aspect of the house's past. Her husband and two small children were left behind when she vanished without a trace. The whispers had driven her husband insane, with rumors circulating that the home was attempting to take his soul. Reading about Helen's unexplained abduction and her family's terrible end made me shudder. The name Helen seemed to reverberate with even more urgency from the whispering in the walls. The home seemed to be attempting to communicate with me, but I was unable to understand what it was trying to say. I contacted Dr. Samuel Winters, a paranormal investigator, since I was determined to find out. He consented to go to the Whispering House because he had dealt with haunted buildings before. I noticed the uneasiness in his eyes as we made our way through the rooms together. Dr. Winters installed apparatus to record any extraterrestrial activity. In an attempt to communicate with the agitated ghosts that appeared to haunt the house, we started with a seance. The anticipation in the air increased as we sat in the poorly lighted living room. I'd never encountered anything like the seance. When Dr. Winters communicated with the spirits, his voice had an unearthly sound. A ghostly aura appeared to fill the room, and I sensed the presence of something invisible. With voices full of regret and desire, the spirits made their presence known. They verified the heartbreaking account of Helen, her disappearance, and her husband's dejection. They told stories of a curse that bound the house and that the only way to lift it was to find the truth. I felt a wave of dread wash over me as the seance went on. The Whispering House's spirits were pleading with me to help them communicate and find the answers they were looking for. They insisted that I look into the basement because they thought it held the secret to breaking the curse. Using our flashlights to cut through the darkness, Dr. Winters and I made our way into the basement. The whispering in the walls became louder and the air thick and oppressive. The spirits were pleading with us to be free, their cries brimming with pain. We found a secret compartment in the basement, concealed behind a fake wall. There were old, dusty mirrors, mysterious symbols, and books from antiquity all over the room. It was obvious that the chamber had once been a site of sinister rites and restricted information. I couldn't help but feel like there was someone or something watching us as we looked about the room. The air grew cold, and the whispering in the walls grew louder. That's when I noticed something strange about the mirror. It seemed to have a malicious energy all by itself. Dr. Winters and I found ourselves drawn to the mirror, our reflection warped as though it were a portal to an alternate reality. At that moment, I perceived a voice which appeared to originate from the mirror itself. "Emma," it murmured. I stared into the mirror, terrified to the point of paralysis. The voice in the mirror talked of long-buried secrets and a curse that had affected the house's occupants for many centuries. It told Helen's real story and the darkness that had engulfed her. In search of information that was illegal but could bring her wealth and power, Helen had become enticed into the world of occultism. She had struck a dreadful bargain in the course of her search, one that let loose a dark entity inside the home. The voices and calls for assistance coming from the souls imprisoned by the curse could be heard whispering through the walls. The evil presence in the home appeared to grow more enraged as the details of Helen's sinister deal came to light. The walls pressed in around us and the basement trembled. The entire mansion itself seemed eager to keep its secrets hidden, so Dr. Winters and I were fighting for our lives. We made one last desperate attempt to smash the mirror, unleashing a surge of energy that drove the evil energy out of the house. The murmurs in the walls stopped and the basement became quiet. It appeared as though the curse had been lifted at last. The whispering house's ghosts were at peace and their voices stopped haunting the walls. Dr. Winters and I saw a deep silence descend upon the house as we emerged from the basement. The house had been freed from the centuries-long gloom. I was overcome with thankfulness for the spirits that had led me to discover the truth. The Whispering House was a haven for lost souls who had achieved atonement rather than a place to be feared. Once veiled in mystery and terror, the house has come to represent the strength of truth and the resiliency of the human spirit. There, the ghosts in the walls had at last found a way to be heard, and the past had been faced. I couldn't help but think back on the adventure that had brought me to learn the terrifying mysteries of the Whispering House as I drove away for the last time. The souls inside had found peace, and the evil power that had tormented the mansion had vanished. However, the ghosts of the past would never go away, serving as a constant reminder that certain secrets are best kept hidden, and that some curses can only be lifted by the daring of those who are prepared to face the unknown head-on. I had long yearned for the prospect of starting over in a new city. It was a thrilling idea to have the chance to buy a home in a quiet area. I had no idea that my trip toward homeownership would quickly become a terrifying nightmare, an event that still haunts me to this day. Maple Street was a picture-perfect suburban community with tidy lawns and amiable neighbors. The modern jewel of a house I had my eye on was a stunning two-story home with lots of windows letting in the warm, golden light of the setting sun. That was the sort of place one could only imagine living in. The house was even more enticing as soon as I entered through the front door. The large living area with its inviting fireplace and tall ceilings unfolded before me. The bedrooms were airy and welcoming, and the kitchen had everything one might need. It was the ideal setting for me to start my new life. I was overcome by an odd feeling that enveloped me as soon as I moved in and wouldn't go away. The house had a thick air quality, and I felt a spooky cold sensation creep up my spine. The doubt whisperings started to bother me, but I ignored them, blaming my uneasiness on the strangeness of my new environment. The first weird thing that happened was on my second night there. A soft, unsettling murmur that was nearly invisible woke me up. It seemed as if the house itself was attempting to speak with me, emanating from the very walls. The whisper became clearer as I sat up in bed and tried to listen. The walls seemed to be attempting to reveal to me some terrifying secret. The words were hardly audible and the voice was quiet, yet they still made me shudder. Stranger things continued to happen throughout the course of the next few days. When I was alone, I would hear footsteps in the corridor and hear doors creak open as though someone was holding them. The whispers persisted, occasionally developing into barely audible murmurs and occasionally rising to almost audible words. When I told friends and family about my encounters, they just thought they were coincidences. They reassured me that it's common for moving into a new home to feel uncomfortable, and that the noises and feelings were probably just the old house settling in. However, as the days stretched into weeks, the house's murmurs became louder and more forceful, signaling that something was wrong. The home itself gave off the impression that it was trying to communicate with me, to reveal a long-buried secret. I looked into Maple Street's past, determined to learn the truth. I looked through old newspapers, talked to people who lived nearby, and found that the house I had bought had a troubled past. It had had multiple owners, each family departing after experiencing unexplained weird occurrences. The story about the first owner, an inventor by the name of Samuel Blackwood, was the most unsettling aspect of the house's past. His family and his job had been left behind when he vanished without a trace. There were rumors that Blackwood's experiments had brought him to ruin and that the home had been abandoned for years, with Blackwood's ghost haunting the hallways. Upon further exploration of Samuel Blackwood's life narrative, I found myself drawn closer to the innovator. There was a feeling of unease about his unresolved disappearance, as though he was still inside the house, waiting for the truth to be revealed. The home seemed to fill with murmurs, and they seemed to be trying to direct me as I looked into it. I started hearing the name Samuel uttered again with a strong sense of urgency. I had the impression that the house was beckoning me to discover its mysteries. I contacted Dr. Emily Reynolds, a local historian with vast expertise in the region's past. She consented to assist me in learning the real story behind the Maple Street home. I could tell she was uncomfortable as we went through the rooms together. To record any paranormal activity, Dr. Reynolds put up equipment. We started with a seance in the hopes of communicating with the restless spirits that appeared to inhabit the house. We sat in the darkened living room, the air growing heavy with expectation. I had never encountered anything like the seance. When Dr. Reynolds communicated with the spirits, her voice had an ethereal air. I sensed something invisible in the room, and it seemed to come alive with spectral energy. With voices full of regret and desire, the spirits made their presence known. The story of Samuel Blackwood, his experiments, and the riddles surrounding his disappearance were verified by them. They disclosed that the secret to discovering the truth was within the house itself. The more the seance went on, the more it seemed like the house's walls were whispering to us, attempting to reach out. The spirits told us that the answers to their suffering might be found in the basement, so we should investigate. Dr. Reynolds and I descended down the basement, our torches piercing the obscurity. The tension in the air increased, and we felt as though the house's whispers were closing in on us. The evil power that had been haunting the house was obviously trying to keep its secrets hidden. We found a secret compartment in the basement, concealed behind a fake wall. There were antique gadgets, strange objects, and worn-out notebooks all around the space. It seemed clear that this was the location of Samuel Blackwood's experiments, and the ghosts seemed to be urging us to carry on looking. I couldn't get rid of the impression that something invisible was watching us and documenting everything we did as we looked around the room. The house was filled with louder and more intense murmurs, and the temperature dropped. That's when I saw an odd contraption sitting on a worktop, a creation of Samuel Blackwood. Upon activating the device, Dr. Reynolds and I noticed that the basement walls seemed to come to life. Dark energy flowed through the air, as if the house sensed our presence. At that moment, Samuel Blackwood's desperate pleas could be heard in our ears. He disclosed the reality of his failed experiments and his attempts to control a strong force. The evil force that had been created had been imprisoning the house's ghosts for years in an effort to preserve its existence. With regret in his voice, Samuel Blackwood pleaded for our assistance in making things right. In a last-ditch attempt, we turned off the gadget, unleashing a wave of energy that drove the evil energy out of the house. As the force was thrown out, the basement trembled and the room's walls appeared to tremble. The Maple Street home became quiet as the dust cleared. The sounds of the spirits inside seemed to have found some rest because they stopped resonating against the walls. It appeared as though the house's long-standing curse had finally been lifted. I was overcome with thankfulness for the spirits that had led me to discover the truth. The Maple Street home was now a haven for redeemed lost souls, rather than a place to be feared. Once veiled in mystery and terror, the house has come to represent the strength of truth and the resiliency of the human spirit. There, the ghosts in the walls had at last found a way to be heard, and the past had been faced. I couldn't help but think back on the journey that had brought me to discover the terrifying secrets of the Maple Street house as I drove away for the last time. The souls inside had found peace, and the evil power that had tormented the mansion had vanished. However, the ghosts of the past would never go away, serving as a constant reminder that certain secrets are best kept hidden, and that some curses can only be lifted by the daring of those who are prepared to face the unknown head-on. The house on Maple Street had shown me that even the most haunted houses might be saved, and that the human spirit could triumph against the supernatural.